some of the studies on the impact of the economy under the EPA, I would say that it will benefit some manufacturing firms and exporters because they will get reduced cost of imported inputs, capital equipment from the EU market. Although we also realize that some few manufacturing firms, especially mineral products and then the furniture sector, will incur some low output of prices. The ordinary Ghanaian consumers will also be able to buy low price products because when they coming from the EU market, there may be no import duties on them. You realize that with the updates that I gave to you, and then for the West African countries, all the developing countries in Africa, south of the Sahara, they realize that getting preferential market access to the EU is very, very important. That is why you realize that the SADC, the EAC, and all those developing countries, they have signed it. And that is even the reason why, if you look at Central Africa, Cameroon being only the developing country in that sector, though the EPA is ongoing, they have gone ahead to sign the interim partnership agreement. So it is important that if you are a developing country in Africa and you want to access the EU market, you go ahead, sign the EPA, and then also ratify it. So what I would say is that Ghana will continue to dialogue with Nigeria, Gambia, and Mauritania to sign the ECOWAS Economic Partnership Agreement so that we finally go ahead and then implement the ECOWAS Economic Partnership Agreement. Most of the Ghana non-traditional exports enter the EU market free of import duties. So if we actually want our current non-traditional export strategy to want to achieve them, that is increasing our non-traditional exports from the current 2.7 billion to 5 billion, and then go ahead and then add value to most of our exportable products, then the only way forward is to sign and ratify the EPA. And then I want to assure also that now that we have an EPA accompanying measures strategy in place, we will ensure that if finally the EPA is signed and ratified, the EPA accompanying measures will prudently be managed to ensure that whatever losses that we incur will be minimized, and then we will maximize our benefits from the EPA. On this note, thank you very much for your attention.
I think the solution or the panacea is that if we don't sign, we're going to lose jobs by some of these export companies in Ghana, made up of majority of them European businesses that have established beachheads in Ghana. The EPA will give unbridled access of 75% of exports from EU to Ghana over the 20-year period. In return, Ghana will have a reciprocal exports to the market in EU. On the surface, that sounds plausible. But if you take a look at the level of the market, the competition in the EU market, can we compete if we go there? Having access doesn't mean you have a market. You have the access. It doesn't mean you can sell. It doesn't mean you can compete. It gives you an opportunity to go there. Let's make a difference as to access and the market. When we give them the additional 40% growth of EU in a way that there will be no tariffs. Do we know what is happening? Where does the government get its revenue? On the basis of taxes and tariffs. If we forgive that 40% additional, that's loss of revenues to government. Where is the government going to make the revenue? And we are all witnesses to the recent increases in taxes under the basis of the ITA, the Income Tax Act of 2015. We want additional when government is losing revenue. Where is the government going to get the additional revenue from? As I said, from the taxes, other than that, from borrowers. And what do the borrowers do to us? So if even today, when we tax them, the tariffs imposed on the European businesses on exports to us, and the government is still borrowing, what happens when we don't tax them? When we lose their revenues? The EU is exporting mainly machinery, equipment, and others to us. So that is taken care of. Then the Chinese are exporting food products, processed food, meat, fish, and others. So what do we have in our markets? Do we have anything left for us? We push on the left by the EU, we push on the right by the Chinese. So if we go to sign the EU, we will entreat our government to assist us, to provide the necessary tools of infrastructure, number one, for us to compete, to produce quality products, so we can then go and market and meet the competition in the European markets. You see, when we signed this 20 years, which allows the EU products to come in within a 20-year period, we also may be sacrificing the future of our generations, the ability to compete. Give us the opportunity to compete. Assist us to prevent our post-harvest losses, that we can provide the processing equipment, processing materials, processing products to be able to sell in your markets. So ladies and gentlemen, so far as I'm concerned, so far as the leadership of the private sector or the private enterprise population, which I represent here, we're not against the EU, we're not against EPA. What we want is a better arrangement, better negotiation to protect the interests of our rudimentary processes and businesses in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Let me just summarize very quickly the primary reasons, the conclusions that we have. Now, one, the EPA would lead to a loss of jobs, another means of livelihood in manufacturing and livelihood. That, in our estimation, the manufacturing and other industrial sectors, the EPA will cost about 40,000 jobs in 10 years. I think the head of PEF talked a bit about the jobs issue. We also anticipate that because of the terms of the collapse of domestic industry, especially in the light manufacturing sector, and compromise the platform for manufacturing that is needed for the transition from smallholder agrarian-based economy into a manufacturing future. The EPA basically is stuck in the past and not sufficiently forward. It is stuck around our raw material export. And it's not looking to the reality that actually, for Europe, the EPAs represent locking in their competitive advantage in their ex-colonies in the face of challenges in other places. Which also explains the scope of the EPAs, which go way beyond trade in goods and includes things which have nothing to do with what is required for WTO compatibility. Overall, the terms of the EPA are not beneficial for Ghana.